Okay, welcome to another new series. I'm doing lots of new things this month. So what I'm going to do once a month is movie reviews, but this isn't really just going to be, your normal movie review. This is going to be an examination of the occult aspects within particular movies, whether they got it right, whether they didn't. If they did, we can discuss a little bit about the history. It will be pretty brief and straightforward. I don't want to give too much away, but do bear in mind there's going to be spoilers. I'm going to be talking about the aspects of what happens in the movie and things like that. So there will be spoilers. So if you haven't watched a movie that I'm reviewing, then just go and watch the movie first, obviously. All right, but let's get into the first one anyway. A Dark Song. So Dark Song is one of the few films out there that treats occultism and ritual magic seriously. It's not flashy or fast paced. Instead, it's quiet, heavy, and deeply focused on what happens when someone commits to a full-blown magical operation. But let's get one thing straight up front. This is not an accurate depiction of the Abramelin working or Abramelin operation, even though that's what the film claims to be based on. Apart from the calling of Sophia's holy guardian angel, which was done in order for her to actually talk to her dead son, a seance would have been a lot easier. The rest of the movie has absolutely nothing to do with the Abramelin operation. In fact, in the beginning, there is a discussion between Sophia and Solomon, Joseph Solomon, the magician, where she actually says that she understood it was all based in Kabbalah. And Solomon, the magician on the scene, laughs at her and for doing internet searches and states that it is all Gnostic. The only Gnostic aspect of the whole thing, the entire movie, was the clever use of the names Solomon and Sophia. As far as the Abramelin operation goes, it's mostly Kabbalistic. But anyway, that said, the film does pull in a lot of other ceremonial magic aspects. Whether they got those right is still debatable. The casting of the circle around the perimeter of the house with salt, for instance. If you're going to use a circle, it needs to be circular so that the energy flows and can't get out. No corners to create energy buildup. But when he's pouring the salt, he goes around one corner of the house, making a corner, not a circle. However, the idea that they were sealed in and couldn't go beyond the liminal space until the ritual was completed, that was pretty good. Still sort of a trope of the genre itself, though. The ritual spaces inside the house were interesting. The idea of moving from one elemental world to the next, almost like walking into different realms, was pretty cool. I found the drawing of the characters on her body to be funny, supposedly Chinese characters, alluding to one of those old Chinese practices. But the one on her left shoulder was the Reiki symbol, Chokurei. I didn't bother to check the others, but there were probably also Reiki symbols. However, the aspects of cleansing and purification were something that we often find in serious magical workings. The dedication to the work, no matter what, was actually quite inspirational. There was some misogynistic abuse, though, which was masked as ritual acts. Most obvious one was when he got her to take her clothes off and then he just jerked off in front of her. He at least admitted that he lied to her and there was no ritual sex magic, but it was still an abuse of power, saying that he did it to cleanse his lustful thoughts. A load of bullshit. The need for honesty through the working is a strong point. Sophia lies about why she's doing the ritual, and that creates tension throughout the working. When working with spirits, honesty is important. They will know when you're lying, but it's mostly about being honest with yourself. If you aren't, the magic gets twisted, just like the lie twists the truth. We also see elements like the use of blood, fasting, isolation, and suffering as tools to focus and bring them into liminal states. However, the drinking of his blood is something we would never find within magic. The blood offerings are a very specific thing done for specific purposes, and Abramelin is not one of them, but definitely not the consumption of someone else's blood. The film does, however, capture the idea that magic isn't comfortable or easy. It's often painful, boring, emotionally intense, and requires discipline. That comes through clearly. The final scene, where the Holy Guardian Angel finally appears, is handled surprisingly well. It doesn't go over the top. It's strange, quiet, and powerful, and that actually reflects how people describe real mystical experiences. Not a Hollywood light show, but a moment that changes everything. So, while the Dark Song doesn't give you the Abramelin operation, and a lot of the ritual practice is questionable, it does respect the seriousness of ritual magic. It's one of the only films to show magic as a process, not a gimmick. It's flawed, yes, but for anyone practicing or studying ceremonial magic, it's still worth watching. For the second movie this month, Color Outer Space. This is a 2019 sci-fi horror film directed by Richard Stanley, based on the H.P. Lovecraft short story of the same name. While it sits solidly in the genre of cosmic horror, the movie also leans heavily into themes that align with occultism and esoteric symbolism. And many of us in the occult communities love a good Lovecraft movie. The movie starts off with some really cute Wicca references, actually. There's a teenage girl on a riverbank with a horse nearby, calling the archangels and elements into a circle in order to do a ritual. A stranger comes walking by, disturbing the ritual, and asks if it was Wicca or Alexandrian. Bit of an oopsie there, seeing that Alexandrian is a form of Wicca, but nonetheless, she then announces that her name is Lavinia Gardner. I'm not sure if the Wicca slash Gardner reference was intentional, but I thought it was quite good anyway. This part is obviously a modern addition to the tale, seeing that the original Lovecraft story was written in 1927, long before Gardner came about with Wicca. However, the basic plot follows the Gardner family, who live in rural isolation. After a meteorite crashes on their property, a strange alien color begins to infect the land, the animals, and the people. Over time, the environment becomes increasingly warped and reality itself begins to break down. This storyline tracks closely with Lovecraft's usual theme, the intrusion of a force so alien and incomprehensible that it dissolves human sanity and the structure of the known world. From an occult standpoint, the film touches on a number of key ideas. And the most obvious one is contact with a non-human intelligence. In magical practice, especially in chaos magic and thelema, interfacing with alien or post-human intelligences is not uncommon. The color in the movie behaves exactly like such an entity. It has no name, no fixed form, no clear purpose. It alters perception, warps time, and rewrites biology, all classical symptoms of contact with an overwhelming force from the underworld. There's also the matter of the land itself becoming a locus of power. Once the meteorite hits, the Gardner property becomes a charged site. Traditional folk magic and necromantic practices often warn that spirits or curses can corrupt a place, making it a blasted or unclean space. In the film, this is visualized in the poisoned well, mutating vegetation, and increasingly unstable weather, markers of a land that's become magically infected or even alchemically activated. The daughter, Lavinia, performs actual ritual magic in the film, draws sigils, lights candles, and performs an invocation. While her rituals appear to blend modern witchcraft with pop culture Wicca aesthetics, there is an undertone of chaos magic in her approach, especially in how it's used as an act of desperation, not faith. She doesn't perform magic as worship. She uses it to gain control over a situation, which aligns with the will-driven foundation of occult practice. Time distortion is another occult element in play. The meteorite doesn't just affect physical space, it bends time. This links directly to magical theories about altered states and the manipulation of reality through consciousness. Time loops, memory loss, and the warping of causality reflect the kind of experiences magicians sometimes report when engaging in deep ritual or entheogenic practice. I also have to mention the subtle but fantastic inclusion of the book that Ward is reading. When you see him at his tent and has his first encounter with the alien beings and the electronic interference, if you didn't notice, it was The Willows by Algernon Blackwood. Algernon Blackwood was a heavy influence on Lovecraft, along with Arthur Machen. Both authors well worth the read, especially for the occult crowd. Plus the inclusion of Tommy Chang as the old hippie mystic in the cabin in the woods, that's just precious. And also, on the topic of books, I forgot to mention earlier, you see Lavinia with a copy of the Necronomicon, which was thought was quite good as well. But overall, Color of Magic is not a movie about magicians, rituals, or spellcraft in a traditional sense, but it is about contact with a force that exists beyond comprehension and the consequences of that contact on body, mind, and land. For those involved in the occult, particularly chaos magicians, psychonauts, or practitioners working with otherworldly beings or Lovecraftian-style entities, this movie can be seen as a cautionary tale or a field report. It's not for everyone. But if your practice involves deep work with the unknown or just a love of Lovecraft, really, Color Out of Space is worth watching as a fictional mirror of very real esoteric risks. And the third and last movie review or occult review this month is Lord of Misrule. This is a folk horror film that leans heavily on themes of rural paganism, suppressed trauma, and the clash between Christian order and older, wilder beliefs, but at the same time showing the modern integration of Catholicism and paganism. It doesn't try to reinvent the wheel, but instead delivers a moody, slow burn story rooted in classic British folk horror traditions, like those found in The Wicker Man. If you're watching it from an occultist or folklore perspective, there's quite a bit to unpack. Some of it authentic, some of it stylized for cinematic effect. The story centers on Rebecca, a vicar who moves to a quiet English village with her husband and young daughter. What starts as an adjustment to small town life quickly turns into a confrontation with the village's older traditions, particularly surrounding a harvest festival and its central figure, the Lord of Misrule. When her daughter goes missing, Rebecca uncovers a buried pagan undercurrent within the community. From an occult perspective, the film borrows heavily from real-world pagan traditions, but adapts them for narrative purposes. The concept of the Lord of Misrule is based on a historical figure found in Old English and European festival traditions. Someone appointed to oversee chaos and inversion during holiday periods, especially around Yuletide. The film shifts this into a sinister, sacrificial figure tied to agricultural cycles and the appeasement of a local god or land spirit. This idea resonates with broader folklore themes: the sacrificial king, the dying god, and the necessity of blood to ensure the land's fertility. There's also a strong use of ritual space and liminality. The woods, the village square, and even the church become battlegrounds for conflicting worldviews. The villagers, while seemingly normal at first, slowly reveal themselves as participants in what is depicted as a cult-like belief system that predates Christianity. Their secrecy, their use of chants, masks, and symbolic ritual action all reflects a kind of folk magic that's theatrical but coherent in its structure. The rituals shown are not exact replicas of any real tradition, but do reflect common patterns in folk witchcraft, especially the idea of masking, embodiment of spirits, the sacrificial aspects of the harvests for a good year ahead, and the power of community. It has been criticized that the movie falls flat in its depth, in that the spirit or god the villagers worship is barely fleshed out, and much of the magical system is left vague. Folk horror often thrives on ambiguity, and Lord of Misrule does well in making the viewer feel like they are an outsider, peering into something secret and dangerous. However, it is also a depiction of a system of folk magic which is or integrates into the daily lives of the community. And I think this was done incredibly well. It is displayed in the little rituals that are done for protection, the charms that hang all over the place on doors inside houses, and in the teaching of the children about the local law, keeping it all alive. Importantly, the film doesn't demonize paganism outright, but it does explore the fear of the unknown and how belief systems can drive people to moral compromise. The real horror isn't the old god, it's the influence of the community leader. In all, I think Lord of Misrule is a solid entry into modern folk horror. It doesn't push many boundaries, but it uses its occult and folkloric elements effectively. For practitioners or students of folklore, it's worth watching, not because it's accurate, but because it reflects how these old stories continue to shape our fears and fascinations. All right, that brings us to the end of this month's reviews. I hope you enjoyed that. This will be an ongoing series, as I said, once a month. I'll do 3 movies. I'll include some series here and there as well. And we'll just have a quick look at some of the occult and pagan witchcraft, magic, esoteric aspects to them. All right, thanks for watching, and see you next time. Cheers for now. Bye bye.